can you share how your experiences as a veteran and community organizer contribute to your perspectives today and who you are today?
So, as a community organizer, I've been put in a position where I've often had to advocate for lots of people, especially in Tampa. Over time, you find yourself like I'm biracial, but I don't look it, right? I'm Latino, that I look. So it took me time to build trust with the Black community, but over time in Tampa, they were coming to me to advocate for housing. So the housing affordability in Florida is extremely out of control, and I used my experience and my skills as a community organizer to implement the Office of Tenant Advocacy. That I feel like that was a tangible win. So these experiences, these tangible accomplishments, I think somebody said earlier that there's $90,000 that's untouched by student organizations. Like, let's use those fundings to actually implement tangible things, make material changes and improvements here on campus.
Okay. Now, Zora, I'm going to go to you on a policy question for 1 minute, 30 seconds. Now, this is something that is specifically mentioned in your promotional materials. Can you talk about your plans to introduce a financial services liaison and why you believe that should matter to students across campus?
Well, one of the Student Assembly's primary jobs is to serve as a bridge between the student body and administration. And although many people are disengaged from Student Assembly itself, or Student Assembly doesn't seem to affect their daily lives, it's undeniable that for thousands of students on campus, where admin touches their life is financial aid. And there have been innumerable stressors and issues with that just in this semester, probably happens every semester. And I think that since our financial aid organization under the Student Assembly has been defunct for a while now, it's important to have a specific point person for financial aid resources. In addition to that, I think that this point person would be able to provide services like seminars on how to do our taxes in March and April, because as much as we are hardworking and knowledgeable people on this campus, there are certain things that we are not born knowing how to do, like your taxes, that our peer institutions offer the same services through their student governments for the same communications and blast purposes. So those are the two visions that I have for that position and many more.
Got it. Okay. Now, Claire, I'm going to come back to you. For 1 minute, 30 seconds, the Student Assembly Election Committee is currently investigating you for interfering in this election. What do you have to say to students about your integrity and why they should trust you despite this ongoing case?
Thank you for bringing that up, and I know that's a hot topic surrounding my name right now. First of all, I want to clear the air. I'm not interfering with anything. In fact, any of the alleged actions happened way before this election even started. Now, I will say that when it comes to my involvement with the dispatch, I acted in the capacity as a whistleblower. I witnessed incorrect action, unethical action, and felt disempowered to say anything. Within my time on the Assembly, as a member of the Executive Board, I felt marginalized. On my first meeting, I had to explain why I deserved a seat at the Executive Board table moving forward. So when the dispatch approaches me, asking me about these potential themes that have been happening between the Interfraternity Council affiliated candidates and Democrat affiliated candidates, I felt empowered that I had a platform to describe what was happening. Now, I will say that I've always advocated for integrity and transparency since last spring, before I was even sworn in as Executive Vice President. During the Student Assembly succession crisis, when it was unclear whether I or Patrick Kuehl would be the next president, I advocated to pass the issue over to the Office of Ethics as an unbiased judiciary to determine the outcome. In spite of my push, several students refused to do so. It was like pulling teeth. So I will continue to commit to that promise of integrity and transparency, and I hope the elections investigation essentially clears my name.
Okay. Now, for this next question, there's going to be no timer, Getulio. You have as long as you want to answer this question, because this is a very long and complicated question, and I think people want answers about this. Now, in 2020, according to the Tampa Bay Times, you were arrested
Mhm.
and charged with battery on a law enforcement officer for striking an officer's arm and pushing past another,
Yeah.
along with some other charges that were later dropped. A spokeswoman for the state attorney's office in Hillsborough County, Florida, said it's not immediately clear what happened to that charge, as she could not find that in her database, but it was reported at the time in local media. Now, today I called that spokeswoman from the state attorney's office in Hillsborough County, Florida, and learned of another incident. According to eyewitness testimony detailed in a police report, on July 20th, 2021, you went to a Dunkin' Donuts location in Hillsborough County, Florida, and tried to return a food order that was from a different Dunkin' Donuts location. The police report says that after you were informed that the fast food restaurant would not accept returns from a different location, you apparently entered into a verbal altercation with the manager there, cursing and yelling at them, which allegedly escalated into you spitting on a fast food worker and trying to barge into the fast food restaurant through the drive-in window. This is in the police report. The fast food staff said that they had to close the window, an action that you said lacerated your finger. The manager even said that they hit you to prevent you from coming inside the restaurant through the window. You called law enforcement to the scene and told them at the time that you essentially dared the manager to hit you in the face before the manager did. That day, you reportedly got into a food fight with the staff, with one employee throwing food in your car and you smearing food on the drive-through window. The window was closed and other parts of the building were locked to keep you out because the employees deemed you a threat. You then called the police and said that you wanted the manager arrested. No charges were filed because of a lack of evidence. The Dunkin' Donuts surveillance camera that would have recorded the altercation was not working at that time. This is all according to the police report, your own statements, and eyewitness testimony from the food service workers there. Now, keep in mind that allegedly, this whole incident started simply because the employees wouldn't accept your return, according to their testimony in this police report. The staff alleged that you escalated the incident to begin with. Now, what do you have to say about these two incidents to students who are skeptical of voting for someone who in recent years has been accused of violent conduct? And can you tell me why students should vote for someone accused of treating fast food workers in that manner?
So, which would you like me to address first?
Whatever you want.
Okay. The 2020, the battery, that was dropped because the state attorney, Andrew Warren, at the time, he decided to drop those charges because it was for protesting. It was at a Black Lives Matter protest that I was organizing at the time. And a friend of, okay, so the entire story goes like this. This is going to take a while. So we had a march in South Tampa, and we had the routes, and we tried to obscure them from police because it was, civil disobedience. By the time that the march was done and we came back to where we had started, several activists and organizers were sitting down in a grassy area off to the side of a parking lot, and they were essentially speaking. It turned into a teach-in, essentially. When that happened, there were still students on the street, and at the time, the police, the chief of police, Brian Dugan, had gone to the Tampa Bay Times, and he insisted that counter-protesters start showing up for police. And that's when the counter-protesters started running over protesters, right? So one counter-protester was in a car, and he started barreling into pedestrians, people who were protesting, and eventually the car hit me. I got onto the roof of the car, and I hit the car stops. I get out of the way, and I yell for people to get out of the way as well. Another activist friend of mine, Jason Stewart Flores, if you look at the police report, he's going to be in there. He was hit by that car. He was taken onto Swan at 45 miles an hour into traffic, and he's on the hood of the car. Okay? So Desiree, she's a nurse that was taking care of the people at the protest in case some crazies did anything. I hop in her van to see what happened to Stewart. By the time we get there, we see that he's being arrested. The officer asked me if I wanted to press charges on the person who had hit Stewart, and I declined. In that moment when I was having a conversation with the officer, one of the riot police pushed me. When he pushed me, essentially, my fingers grazed his arm, and that was the battery. That was the assault and battery that happened, right? Just because I simply touched him after he stiff-armed me. So that's that one.
No, but it says you struck an officer's arm and pushed past another. So do you refute that?
No, that's not what happened. Essentially what happened was the officer stiff-armed me. When he stiff-armed me, I recoil, my arm goes like this, and it just, like that, essentially. I didn't touch him, I didn't hit him, I didn't hit anybody.
Understood. Now, I think students around this campus, especially student employees who work in retail and in food service, they might be more concerned about the second.
And I'll talk about that as well. What had happened in that altercation, so I did go to return food to the Dunkin' Donuts, and I put it in the window for whatever reason. The girl took the food. It had already been in the restaurant. And I asked her, like, look, I just want to return it. I don't want this because this, I didn't order this, right? She calls the manager for whatever reason, didn't want to take it off my hands. The manager's like, no, I'm not going to take this. I don't understand why. I don't know why. As I'm driving off with my window open, he throws the food all over me in the car, right? And then I was angry because it had gotten all over me. It had gotten all over my car. I get out of the car and I ask him, like, dude, what's your problem? Why are you doing this? And he punches me.
In the police report, you said something to the effect of "hit me," and then
No.
That's what it says in the police report that
No.
you said to the police officer.
No. Why? Like, I didn't tell him to hit me. Why would I tell him to?
That's what the spokeswoman for
I got out
state
of
attorney
I got out of the car because he threw like food all over my car, inside of my car as I was driving off. Right? I was angry and I spoke to him and I was like, dude, what's your problem? And he's like, get away from the window, get away from the window. Things escalated. He hits me, and then my finger gets caught in the window. When that happens, I call the police. I report it, and after it's reported, he's like, look, man, there's no cameras. There's nothing you can do. Just leave. And I left. That's the long and short of it. I didn't attack the guy or anything. Like, the guy punched me.
Did you spit?
No, I didn't spit at nobody.
Okay, so you refute that, and you refute trying to go into the
Yes.
restaurant through the window.
Yes.
Okay. And is there any message that you have to student workers who work in fast food or work in retail?
I'm
No.
sorry, could we start with that question? Because it feels as though this question grilling someone's past has been
Right.
going on excessively long.
No,
to
I
it's
just wanted to give him the time to address it.
It's fine. No, it's fine. Like, things have happened, and if I was on the other side, I'd be curious too. I apologize.
Just whatever point you want to finish, and then we'll move on.
For fast food workers, like, they're workers. I don't care if you're a fast food worker, if you're an engineer. If you're working, you deserve to be paid and you deserve dignity, period. So it has nothing to, like, if that altercation, if somebody believes that it stemmed from something like that, that's not wrong. I support labor 100%. I've organized with the IBEW back home, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. So.
All right, yeah, thank you for your answer,
Yep.
your thought-out answer. We're going to move on now back to our regular line of questioning. That was a longer thing that I wanted to address here because I thought it was important, especially as elections, amid the elections.
Yeah.
Now, Claire, I want to go back to you. This is for 1 minute, 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Your campaign materials say that you're pushing for community-driven projects. Can you talk about what those are and why they are important to you?
Of course. Year after year, at the very least in the time that I've been on the Assembly, I have yet to see our SAIFC funds being effectively used. This money comes to us every year, $90,000 just waiting to be used. Now, I've seen other candidates bring up very similar ideas, and it's that we need to be connecting the right resources to the right visionaries and the right people. Other AAP candidates, I believe, have tied this to their own internal communities with the students' perspective of what they think would not only have artistic and aesthetic value, but improve the physical quality and aesthetic of the campus itself. I think that the SAIFC fund is severely underutilized and undertapped, as well as the general financial support that the Assembly brings to begin with. when we look at the history of the Assembly, we can see how we were the ones who helped support and fund Annabelle's Grocery, which is a large source of food for a lot of many food insecure students. We also see how the Free Period Products Initiative was initially took off from the ground, starting from SAIFC before it switched to its own independent funding. That being said, we have these deep pockets ready to support students, and all we need to do is just find the right people to connect the visionaries to the resources.
Okay. Now, Zora, I want to move on to you. I'm going to ask some age-related questions to
That's fine.
Zora and Getulio, but I'm going to start with you, Zora, and I'm going to give you a minute and 30 seconds. Now, you are a freshman running for Student Assembly President, the most senior role. To be elected president while still a freshman would be highly unusual. Can you make a case for why students should vote for such a relatively young candidate?
Well, first of all, I have more institutional knowledge than your average freshman, having served as freshman representative for the class of 2027 for the past semester and a half. I also see being a freshman and a sophomore in this role as entirely advantageous. I will be at Cornell for at least 3 more years, and I am fairly engulfed in life on campus and enamored with Cornell at this stage. And my visions for the office and for the role have the same, if not more, longevity than I do.
Okay. Now, Getulio, I'm going to go back to you and ask a question in a similar vein.
Right.
You are running for Student Assembly President well in your 30s.
Yeah.
It's unprecedented to have a Student Assembly President who comes from a different generation than the student body they represent. So can you make a case for why students should vote for a candidate who isn't from their generation?
Again, going back to my why, it's people approach me to do this. And I guess what I'm here to do is to leverage my experience in accomplishing things in the community or getting bills passed to change things on campus. And that goes for everyone. Whether that's bolstering the investment commission, or it's just a variety of things. I hear that people are dissatisfied with how the administration is treating Student Assembly, and I think just having somebody there with that experience to bridge that gap would be a benefit. And I think that I can bring a perspective to the conversation that Gen Z just doesn't have, and I'm not here to talk down to anyone. If anything, I'm here to punch up, and if I can help do that, then so be it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for your response. Now, Zora, I want to come back to you, and then I'm going to ask more questions to be clear in a moment. Now, I'm going to give you 1 minute and 30 seconds to answer this one. You haven't initiated any resolutions throughout your term. Is that correct? Yes or no?
That is correct.
Okay. You haven't initiated any resolutions throughout your term. What do you have to say to students who are concerned about that, and how will you be more involved in policy in the future if you are elected president?
Well, I'd like to start by saying that none of the freshmen on the Assembly have initiated any bills, so I'm not unique in this respect. I have, however, been very active behind the scenes and beyond Cornell as a representative from our Student Assembly. So I've been very active in the fall and the Appropriations Committee in determining who gets what funding from our student activities fee in the byline. I've also been active in the Internal Operations Committee, hoping to make the Student Assembly a more efficient organization, and maybe bring back some of the institutional knowledge from alums from years past. And I've also served, and I'm very proud of this, as a Cornell delegate on the SUNY, so State University of New York Student Assembly, where I've been involved in things like what Adam mentioned in the EVP for suicide prevention, as well as one that I am really passionate about, which is ending student hunger as a statewide program, which, considering Cornell's contract colleges do provide pressure to the administration, I think is a unique avenue that I'm learning to navigate and hope to bring to the greater role of president.
Thank you. Now, Claire, I'm going to give you 1 minute, 30 seconds to answer this next one. And then we're going to go to a more positive line of questioning. These haven't been easy questions, but thank you for, all of you for answering, truthfully, honestly, or at least, your guys' truth. And we're going to move on to this one, 1 minute, 30 seconds. Now, perhaps one of the most controversial polarizing resolutions from last year was one that you drafted, which urged professors to provide trigger warnings on syllabi about potentially traumatic content. Now, free speech experts and the university's leadership have said that the resolution stood against free inquiry and academic freedom. What lessons have you learned from the divisiveness of that policy proposal, and how will you, as president, if elected, ensure that different perspectives will be adequately represented on the assembly?
Absolutely, and I might touch back base with you just to see that I'm getting all the elements of the question. Now, the first thing is that resolution came from a time when I was still learning and understanding the shared governance system, and it came from a place of good intent, namely supporting a sexual assault survivor who is bravely litigating against her assailant in the Title IX office. Now, over time, I have found that there are ways that we must balance both academic freedom and students' mental health needs. In fact, after the resolution became widely known and its feature in the New York Times, many students began to message me privately thanking me. Many students approached me explaining different situations that they had encountered, having to watch movies where someone was being beheaded with no warning in the middle of live cafe at like 10 a.m., or seeing violent acts of police brutality with no heads up. Now, the thing is about a content warning is that scholars unanimously agree from studies stemming all the way from 1985 to 2023 that there is no standard definition of what is considered a trigger or content warning. It can be as specific as blood, gore, and sexual violence to something like, hey guys, this is really difficult to watch, viewer discretion is advised. I think that from this, moving forward, we need to be approaching questions surrounding students in the higher education environment from a place of compassion. And in doing so, we need to be consulting faculty for their input as well to further this conversation. Its controversial nature is the very thing that pushes the needle forward.
Okay, thank you. Now, I'm going to start with you again. We're going to go down the line like we did at the beginning. I wanted to ask for 1 minute, 30 second response, please. What do you think your greatest accomplishment has been, whether that's inside the student assembly or outside, that you want to highlight to your potential voters?
Sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
Of course. What has your greatest accomplishment been, either inside or outside of the student assembly, that speaks to who you are and that you would want to highlight to potential voters?
The student assembly taught me how to fearlessly advocate for the underdog. This is a value that I've always grown up with, and one that I am kind of, always holding as an ILR student. I inherently see the world through these power dynamics and social relationships. But going back to the last question that we asked about Resolution 31, it's making waves on a national level to catalyze change. We saw a ripple effect across the nation, and discussions begin to happen about content warnings and how far is too far, and redefining the lines of what a content warning is in this discussion about sensitivity, empathy, and compassion. Again, it was controversial, yes, but the discourse is needed to push the needle forward. The Student Assembly has also taught me what it means to be an AAPI, child of immigrant woman, to lead in a predominantly white environment. And being in this position has not only granted me access to policy opportunities, but also leadership workshops made for people just like me. And I think one of the biggest parts of my Cornell experience truly has been learning the ins and outs of policy, writing, and its application.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to ask the same question to you. What has your biggest accomplishment in your mind, either inside or outside of the Student Assembly, been that you would like to highlight to your potential voters?
I am very proud of the way that I have, shown Cornell off and exhibited my Cornell pride to the connections around the state of New York that I have built through the SUNY delegation that I've been lucky to be a part of. I hosted the SUNY Student Assembly Executive Committee about a month and a half ago now, and all in the hopes of rebuilding those connections between Cornell and this like vital resource with the state. And it's also a great opportunity and institution in our state to learn from students at community colleges, more commuter-focused schools, to then have perspectives that we can bring back to our own students who fit those same roles on Cornell's campus, or who have backgrounds with the same perspectives on Cornell's campus, and really just bringing like that diversity from a larger scope of students back here to Ithaca.
Okay, thank you. And Getulio, you haven't been on the assembly, so I'm just going to ask you a general version of the question. What do you think in your life has been your greatest accomplishment that you want to highlight to people who might vote for you?
So it's April 2020. Everything's locked down in the state of Florida, and I could not do anything about it. So I got with a group of people, friends of mine, and we started going door to door and talking to people. Are you going to be employed because of this lockdown? What are you going to do? How are you going to pay rent? Essentially, we drafted a petition to hold. It was basically a moratorium on rent and mortgages, and we got in about 2 weeks. If I'm not mistaken, we got about 3,000 signatures, and we were able to take that. And this is like everybody's fearful, they're scared, they don't know what they're going to do because the uncertainty of the pandemic. And with those 3,000 signatures, I was able to take it to Tallahassee, and that's how we got an eviction moratorium, and we got the mortgage moratorium. I think that was the biggest one, because I was concerned that people, with the pandemic raging, that the houseless population, that would have just made things a lot worse if the houseless population increased. 10 seconds. So yeah, I guess that's my that's my biggest accomplishment.
Your point if you want to go.
No, I mean, also 5 pantries and food banks. Like Pierce Middle School had like 45% food insecurity. So I'm proud of that.
All right, thank you. Now, as we start to wrap up, I wanted to ask, everybody on this panel here, on this forum, how do you think your lived experiences have influenced your perspectives today that you are going to bring potentially to the Student Assembly presidential role? And this is a very broad question. Answer however you like. Claire, can we start with you for 1 minute and 30 seconds?
Sure. Now, I'll start with some time, I guess, on the Assembly, and it's that I am the only candidate who has the following 3, which is executive level experience as the executive vice president, institutional knowledge from working with admin, the Office of Sorority and Fraternity Life, housing, residential, Cornell IT, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And finally, community-driven values, and this is very much so reflected in my interpersonal relationships with many student leaders. And so I think these things uniquely set me up to be not only a leader for the people, but leader of the Assembly, someone who knows how to run the ship. Now, in terms of my own lived experiences being an Asian woman, I often am subject to the model minority myth, and in rooms where there are not a lot of people who look like myself, I'm often overlooked. So I understand how to look for the voices that aren't being included, who's not at the table, if you will. And I think that by virtue of this experience, I lead with the value of inclusivity and accessibility first. Now, tying back to what I mentioned about my father and the values that he taught me, he always taught me to look for the underdog first. He taught me to reevaluate what my privileges were, the things that I don't have to worry about, and how that might affect someone else's life. That's why on the Assembly, I lead with the perspective of securing basic needs and making sure that the playing field is somewhat level for the students on campus.
Okay, thank you. Zora, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Claire. What do you bring, potentially to the presidential role? From your lived experiences, from your background, what kind of insight has that given you? 1 minute, 30 seconds, please.
To start with my experience in student governance, all through high school, I served in my student government in a very similar legislative, but also admin-oriented body, and there were many resolutions there that I'm very proud of that I worked tirelessly for multiple years on, and I strive to bring the same patience and care to my role here in whatever capacity as an active student over my remaining time at Cornell. In terms of my lived experiences as a white passing mixed child, I'm very used to being overlooked or people not assuming a lot of me that is just not true, and I've gained from that an ability to look at the world with a lot of detail-oriented, a very detail-oriented mindset. And I often think before I act. When I played Quiz Bowl in high school, my team captain was always proud of me for just knowing that whenever I was there to answer a question, I was 80 to 100% sure, because I don't operate below that standard for myself. It is with that I hope to bring to this role on the assembly and my future at the school, just the same patience, care, and detail-oriented just belief and passion that I always have.
Okay, thank you, Zora. Getulio, I'm going to ask the same question that I asked everybody else to you. What do you think you bring potentially to the student assembly in terms of your lived experiences and your background? 1 minute, 30 seconds, please.
Okay. So I am a child of immigrants, so I guess I'm a first generation American, working class or working poor, non-traditional student, Air Force veteran, black on my mom's side, Latino. So yeah, I have a very unique worldview, just because I've always, when I was younger, I've always felt like I don't belong anywhere, but I belong everywhere, and that's made it easy for me to relate to people from different backgrounds, and it's also made me curious. It's made me want to talk to other people and find out more about them, find out more about their worldviews, and it's like reach one, teach one. It's incorporating these things to make a better whole, right? So my lived experience, I've seen a lot, I've done a lot. I'm here just to serve student body. That's what I'm here for. If I'm elected, that's what I would do. That's it.
All right, thank you everybody for your time and for all of your reasoned responses.
Yeah.
Now, whoever wins, whoever doesn't win, the Sun looks forward to continuing to hear your perspectives and working with all of you. So thanks a lot for coming out here today and facing some of my tough questions, but also some of my positive questions.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.